Everyone. We're just going to give it a couple more moments just to see if we get a couple more people to join, and then we'll begin shortly. Okay, well, let's begin today's webinar where we're going to be talking about deduplicating records. So first, as you guys may know, my name is Milo. I'm one of the customer support analysts here at WorkBooks, and I'm going to be talking through how to deduplicate records when it comes to people records and organizations. Now, as you're aware, we do have a series of webinars that we are working through, where on the screen you can see what webinars we do have coming up. So do make sure that you sign up to those so that you can keep up to date and get new information as it comes in. But let's have a look at today's agenda. So our agenda today is first going through how you can identify duplicate people and organization records within workbooks. And then once you've been able to actually identify those, we're going to talk about how you can merge them together. And I'll be talking through the steps for that. And then afterwards, I'm also going to talk about how you could also use a report to find duplicate records. And I'll be going through the process of actually building that and showing you guys the steps for it. So how do we see if there are duplicate records? Well, within workbooks, if you open up a person record or an organization records and workbooks detects that there is a duplicate, you will see an orange duplicate button. Now, the way that workbooks detects these duplicates is when it comes to people, it looks for an exact match on the main email address. With organizations, it does a start with match looking at their name. And I'll show you how this works shortly. Now, within a report, we do have a couple of template reports within workbooks, and I'll show you where to find those. But you can always create your own report so that you can actually determine what you want to use as criteria to match on the duplicates. Now, that being said, I think let's actually jump into workbooks and actually run through how we would see the duplicate records and how we would actually go through that. So before the webinar, I created some people records within workbooks, which you can see here. And I'm just going to go through some of them just so we can actually talk about everything. So the first one that I'm going to open is I'm going to open up Pete Peterson. Now, when I open up Pete Peterson, we can see that we have that one duplicate. And this, as I mentioned earlier, is looking at the email address on here. And so it's found that there is a duplicate person because they've got the same email address. So the way that we would actually merge these two records is that we would hit our duplicate button. And on here, it would show what the duplicate record is, where we can tick to say that it's a duplicate, and we can press merge selected records. One thing that you can also do is you can also add additional duplicate records if you do know that there are any. I also want to point out that if you do have multiple people records with the same email address, they would all appear here. So I've selected my other Pete's record, and I'm going to select merge selected records. And when I do, we get this new window appear where we've got the details from each of those records side by side. And we can actually say which information where there's a difference we want to actually keep for this. So as you can see, that not only is the person reference different to each one, but I've also got the title and job role and a few other details. And what I can do is, if I wanted to change my job role so that it went with the other record, I can just simply click and select it. And I can do the same with the phone numbers if I wanted to. So once I've gone through the process and I've selected which information I want to keep where there's a difference, I would simply just go to Next. And what would happen is it will tell me that it's going to delete one of the records and it's going to update the other record with the following information. It's good to know that this merge function, as it deletes records, that a user would need to make sure that they have the delete capabilities for the specific record types. If they don't, then this option wouldn't be available to them. But what I do now is just finish off my merge by pressing merge down here in the bottom right. I'm asked if I'm sure, so yes. And now what would happen is as you can see here, that it is running through a process where it's known as the data, that I can view it on our data quality landing page, and it will actually just merge them, and it's working as a scheduled action. What will happen is after a few moments, I would get a notification to say that the other record has been deleted. So that's how you'd see when there are duplicate records based on the email address. But the email address is not always the same, or that while there are times when it's the same person and it's the same email address, there could be times where actually the email address is the same, but the people are different. What I'm going to do is open up Jodie's record here. Now, as you can see, and there's my notification from earlier. As you can see, it's saying that we have a duplicate here, and we've got the email address as support@dixonpartners.co.uk. And when I hit the duplicate button, it's actually saying that the duplicate record is someone called Chris Paintain, and they again have the same email address. So the question is, it's like, what would I do in this situation? Because it's clear that they're not the same person, but it's still showing as a duplicate. What I would usually do in this situation is I would make a note of who the name was. I would cancel my merge, and I would then find the other person there. Now, obviously, I know it's Chris, and I can find him here. So what I can then do is if I move Chris's record to the right, and I then move Jodie's record to the left using the fun snap right, snap left, I can have a look and see what the difference is here. Now, obviously, they seem to be different positions, but they've got the same email address. And it appears, well, there's a small difference in the name, but they also seem to work for the same organization. So what I would do is, as I can see that Jodie is the support director and the email address is support@dixonpartners.com, I would actually go into Chris's record and I would remove the email address. When I do that, save it, you can see that it's no longer saying that it's a duplicate for Chris. Now, what I'd need to do for Jodie is just quickly save the record. And you can see that it's now no longer saying that it's a duplicate there. But this organization, where the names are very similar, leads me to actually go into, well, how can we see when there are duplicate organizations? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this organization And when this opens up, we can see again, we get the duplicate button. So when I go on here, we can see that that Dixon Partnership Limited has shown as a duplicate. So what I can do again with this is I can select here and go merge these records. And again, I can choose what information I want to keep. And I would follow the same process that I did earlier with Pete. So let me go through those steps. And again, it is queued for that action to happen. Now, one thing that can sometimes happen is you have a duplicate person, but the email address is slightly different. So what I'm going to do is, as I've got an example of it here, I'm going to open Abigail Adams' record, where I can see that it's got the email address of aadams@company1.com. But if I also open up my other Abigail record, I can see that the email address is abby@company1.com. So let's put these side by side, and I can show you what we can actually do here. So in this situation where it is clear that they are the same person because I've also got them working for the same company, that if I go to my actions and I select merge, what I can do is actually go with this option of add additional duplicate record. And I can do a search for Abigail. So let me just do that. And I can select the record. So now it shows that I can actually do this, that I can actually select it as a duplicate. When I make this page larger, I can again follow the merge selected records process. And again, I can go through the steps and go, actually, these are the email address. This is the address and the email address that I want to keep. While we are deleting records, it's always handy to know that even though you're deleting the record, that any related activities or emails when you're doing the merge would actually be associated with the record that you've now kept, so you don't lose those activities. So I've now shown you how workbooks can identify when there's a duplicate, and I've shown you that if you know that there is a duplicate in there, how you'd be able to merge yourself. But sometimes you don't know when there are duplicates, and so you'd need a report to actually identify that. So let's actually build this report. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the workbooks icon, go to new, and go to report. And for my options here, I'm going to select create a report from a template. Now, there are a lot here, so I can understand it could be confusing. But if I add a filter where I go that the template name contains dupe, you can see that I actually have some options here. Now, I'm going to select possible duplicate people. Obviously, whenever building a report, you do need to make sure that you provide a name for it. So let me just do that. And then in my details tab, as it is a template report, it will already have some columns here. And this template also goes on matching on the name and also matching on the email address. But sometimes you may want to try and match on a different field within the records. So I've got an example where I've actually matched on the mobile. So what I'm first going to do is add a column. and I'm going to add my mobile column. And while I've got my matching email address, I'm actually going to use this view and change it so that I match on the mobile rather than on the email address. So obviously the first step, I would need to just change the name of the summary view. I'd need to change my grouping column where, as you can see, that it's grouping by email address. So I need to change that first to mobile. And I've also got a criteria in here where it says where the email address is not blank. I obviously need to change that. So it's no longer the email address, but the mobile. With that done, when I load my preview, you guys will see I have a mobile number that says that there is a duplicate. But I'll obviously need a little bit more information from that than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a calculated column where I can actually see what the two people record person references are. So let me just go add a calculated column, give it a title, and obviously I want to add my formula. The formula that I actually want to use is what we call a group concat formula, where we actually take information from the same column so that we can display it all together. And you can actually view one of our past webinars on how to use the group concat formula. So let me just quickly add that now. And then I'm going to add my column of object reference, close off my formula, save and close. And now when I refresh, bring the columns over, you guys can see that it now shows both of those person references. Now, while I can't click on them to open up those records directly, I would be able to still go to the start menu and use the search function there to type in those person references so that I can bring up those records directly. So let me just run this report. And that's how you'd create a report to show duplicate people records. One thing that is also useful to point out is that within workbooks, we do have a DQ module, and this can actually help merge duplicate records in bulk, where if you do want some information on how to use the DQ module, we do have information on our knowledge base that you can go to, and you would be able to ask for more details as to whether you can get the module by talking to your account manager. Let's recap. So, as I said, Workbooks identifies duplicate people using their email address and organizations by their name. When Workbooks does detect a duplicate, you will actually see the orange duplicate button on the record. And then that merge function allows you to choose what data you want to keep from both of those records, and then it would actually delete the record that's not needed anymore. Okay, so let's see if we've got any questions. Not seeing any questions at the moment. I've just had a question come in from Rachel saying, can you undo a merge? Very good question. So let me just jump back into Workbooks so that I can show you. Now, you would have noticed that when you're doing this merge function, that you do get the notification to say that the merge has happened. What you can do is if you go to the Start menu, go to your bulk changes and to data quality. Within here, it shows you those merge functions. And as you can see that I've got the couple here that I did earlier, what I can do is go into them. It tells me what the affected records are. And in the actions, I should be able to actually undo that merge. Apologies that it's not showing up here, but there would be an option to actually undo the merge once it's happened. An alternative way to do it is if you go to your Start menu, go down to deleted items and go into people, because I've been merging people, you can actually see those people records that had previously been deleted. And I can actually click into them and actually go recover person, and that would reinstate the person record. So hopefully that answers your question, Rachel. I've got another question here from Caroline saying, what if people have typed in their number or email address differently? So with that one, Caroline, that obviously if the number or the email address is different, workbooks wouldn't pick it up automatically. But that's where using the report so that you can actually look into, okay, do people work at the same place and what information you have, you'd be able to see, okay, these people match on the employer or these people match on the name. So you can actually see what the difference is there and see if there are any possible records. So you'd use the report just to see if there are differences there. So I've got another question of what if two contacts have the same name, the same employer, but have different emails? Is there a way to dedupe in bulk? So obviously with that question, to do the deduping in bulk, that would use the DQ module that I've mentioned earlier. But also the way to actually detect if they have the same name and the same employer, that's where you would use a report to actually see where those duplicates are. So again, what I could do in here is where before I was matching on the mobile, what I could actually do is change that so that I'm matching on the employer. And as you can see, I've already got one that looks at matching on the person name. So I can see what duplicates there are there. Hopefully that answers your question. And that looks like to be all the questions. I can see one question that's come in about gaining access to the recorded version of this. You will be getting an email after the webinar where there is a link to this recording. Plus, we do also post all of our webinars onto our website. So you'll be able to get access that way too. So I would like to thank you guys for joining me today. The next webinar that we'll be doing, which is on the 15th, we'll be talking about doing a database cleanup where you'd be removing audit and freeing up space on your database. But in the meantime, if you do need any help, you can always check our knowledge base by either pressing the question mark icon or going direct to the page, our knowledge base page. Support contacts can raise cases with support using our support portal, or you can talk to your account manager. We do also have a number of recordings on our website where you've got that. And as I mentioned, we do upload the recordings of all of these webinars on our webpage, where if you go to the resources tab down at the bottom and press webinar recordings, you will be able to find them there. But I want to say thank you everyone for attending today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.